Hello again, everybody. We're looking at Edge Magazine issue 10, July 1994. And I hit the 15-minute mark discussing the 3DO. So one thing I didn't mention last time was that the 3DO was very expensive, $700 at the release, because the most companies like Sony and Nintendo, they don't make a profit off of selling the console. They actually make a loss. And the reason why they do this is because you have to infiltrate the market. And after that, you make money selling the games. And 3DO didn't do that. Trip Hawkins let other companies make the consoles, like Panasonic, and they were extremely expensive because Panasonic was like, hey, the only reason I'm making these machines is to make money off of them. So the 3DO was too expensive, and Sony entered the market at $300, and that made a big difference. I believe the Saturn was $400, and yeah, that's also a reason why the PlayStation beat the Saturn. And there's some talk about MPEG not being good enough for movies, and yeah, I mean, just the storage alone, CDs weren't good at playing movies yet. It would require the DVD, which is the PlayStation 2 technology. Okay, so here's a funny article about all the different formats at the time. We have VHS and Betamax, Laserdisc, cartridges, the internet, CDs, floppies, wavelengths. So yeah, at the time it was termless. It was termless times. There were a lot of different games. Not that many were good. Most of them were on the Super Nintendo and Genesis, luckily, and the PC. The PC also had good games in the mid-90s. And those were the three systems you needed. But there were a lot of other different systems with different formats. And if you wanted to play games like Dracula X, you needed a CD PC engine. And the 3DO had some good games. Tempest 2000 was on the Jaguar. So, yeah, at the time a lot of people wanted just one system to do it all, like the CDI promised. So let's talk about that. A lot of technical stuff. Why not all systems are compatible. Now here's a cult classic, SOS for the Super Nintendo, which used Mode 7 scaling to rotate the level, and it's you're in a ship like the Titanic and it's sinking, and you have to save as many people as you can and yourself. Here's a map of the ship. Here's some people. It's all, high class, and it only gets a 7 because it's not a very good game, but the concept is original. Still win a CD32. I love this commercial. Prepare to beat thy doom. Yeah, Quarter 7 was gonna, take out Doom, of course, except it didn't. Here's a good-looking 3D game for the computer called Pacific Strike by Electronic Arts. Was this a spiritual successor to the Jungle Strike games? I don't think so. I think he wrote it in an airplane. So, but made by Electronic Arts, and Edge likes it a lot, gives it an 8, but I wouldn't be bothered to check it out. I'm not that into flight sims. And we have Super Wing Commander, not for the Super Nintendo, which I think had the same name, but this is the 3DO version, which had, photography with bad animation. But yeah, Wing Commander. Not the most technical of space sims, more on the action side, but definitely not as arcadey as Space Harrier or anything. So this version is spruced up with full motion video, and it plays pretty much the same. It gets a 7. Here we have that racing game, and I thought it was pretty good, but I was confused with Nigel Mansell's game for the Mega Drive. This game apparently has very choppy animation, and it has a lot of CD features which nobody really was interested in because it was based on the Formula One season of a year before, which was a problem in the mid-90s. In the mid-90s, all the Formula One games are always out of date. And it only gets a 4 out of 10. So not enough, again, another flop for the Mega CD. The Seventh Guest is released for the CD. I thought this game was much older. I thought it was released in 1992. Correct me if I'm wrong. Here they review the CDI version, and this is a testament of games at the time. It's kind of like Myst. You walk around and you solve puzzles, and there are fancy graphics. And for some reason, Myst was loved by people, but Seventh Guest was lamented. I think they're almost the same kind of game. We have Windjammers for the Neo Geo. I don't know why this was reviewed. It only gets a 5. It's a volleyball game with explosions, apparently, for the Neo Geo. And, there's also some bowling, I see. Anyhow, they say it's fun, but definitely not worth the £170, which would be like $250. So they give it a 5. And they keep doing these retro reviews in Edge magazine at the start, looking at rather subpar arcade classics. And I think I finally found out why they do this. I mean, Flying Shark is not that interesting. They're much better shoot-'em-ups. But I noticed the price here, and I think this all has to do with actually just buying the board. So they did these retro reviews so that people could be like, oh yeah, I remember that arcade game. Hey, let me buy it online, or I don't know how you bought them. And so Edge talks about how good it is. And they wouldn't discuss Street Fighter or, I don't know, Turtles in Time, because those would be too expensive to buy. So they only looked at the second-rate games. The charts. Most Wanted, Alone in the Dark 3 is getting some hype, rightfully so. Daytona, Ridge Racer, Legend, which we discussed last time, which wouldn't be released for quite a while and looked totally different, and Doom for the Jaguar. And so this is 1994, and in the United States, you could see that the Genesis was outselling the Super Nintendo because NBA Jam, NBA Showdown, World Series Base, all Genesis games. They took the 3 top spots. And then number 6 is also Genesis. And we have NBA Jam for the Super Nintendo coming in at 8th place, which is still the best-selling game in Britain for the Super Nintendo. So, yeah, mostly sports games. That in the United States, that was a thing. People wanted to play sports games, and they loved their Genesis, even though they were only slightly better than the Super Nintendo versions, if you ask me. And Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball is underrated. There's still a Mega CD Top 10. I forgot to look at it last time. But Night Trap is crawling back up to 3rd place. So I can't let that one down. Sonic CD has fallen to 7th place. Okay, and the Japanese are buying Final Fantasy VI. Great. Fancy commercial for Rare. Looking all Silicon Graphic-like. Yeah. So, they're getting ready for a stupendous future. Releasing hit after hit after hit. And here we have an interview with Jeff Minter. He would later go on to write columns for Edge, and I hope you know this fellow because he's a cult icon. He's a bit of a raver, and he has a farm in Wales. And he's always made games by himself as a single program. In the 80s, he had a bunch of funky arcade games for the Commodore and probably also the Spectrum. And in 1994 he released Tempest 2000, fantastic game. We talked about it last time. Here he is showing it off. And he continued to make games like Tempest 2000. There was TXK released later on for, I believe, Xbox Live. And not that long ago, he made another game. I can't remember the name, but another game with lots of fancy effects and arcade shooting. And he talks about his inspiration coming from Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. So, yeah, a bit of a hippie and anti-capitalist. And Edge will often talk about him, even though he's not made that many awesome games. But interesting character. And we reach the Q&A. Again, a lot of technical questions, which I won't bother to go into. And that's it for Edge Magazine number 10. Next time in Edge 11, we will be discussing the CDI. Yeah, Edge still gives it a chance, apparently. Here you have the E of Edge. And the traditional black back. So, see you next time, Edge 11. And I look forward to discussing the CDI with you. Until then.